state of Maine, Graham Platner.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. And coming from someone who has dedicated so much of their life to furthering the cause of justice, the cause of equality, the cause of decency in this country, it means a hell of a lot. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I also want to say thank you to everyone in the crowd who has been doing this for a long time. Something that sticks with me is when I first got into activism, I became quite close with some people who've been doing this since the Vietnam War. And it became clear to me that these were people who in many ways had watched their society get worse. That the things they set out to fight against, the exploitation, the oppression, the violence, that they saw a society entrenched in that. And yet here they were, 40, 50 years later, still engaged in that same work. And something that has continued to animate me is that if they were still hopeful after going from the 1960s to today, and they still wake up every single day and they put their walking shoes on to get out there and do the work, knock on the doors, stand on picket lines, hand out literature, if they still can find the energy to do that, then there is no way that I can find any excuse to not continue the same project. And so for those of you who have been in this for a long time, I just wanted to say thanks. You kept the fire alive. But today there's a lot of tinder laying around. And it's time we start setting fire to a lot of that tinder. Because we really need to build back the energy that is going to allow us to build movement politics again in the United States.
Yes. Yes.
I'll give you a very brief rundown. I was born and raised in eastern Maine. Was born in the town of Blue Hill, grew up in the town of Sullivan, where I live now. I went to high school in Bangor. I joined the Marine Corps. I joined the infantry in 2004 and did multiple deployments to Iraq and then Afghanistan. I wound up joining the Army afterwards because I wanted to see how the other half did infantry combat. I wound up getting out in 2011. I got back from Afghanistan for my fourth tour in 2011 and was very disillusioned, very angry, I felt betrayed, I felt used. I had begun to develop a deep critique of American foreign policy where I witnessed and took part in an immense amount of violence against people who I could not for the life of me figure out how hurting them was making my hometown any safer. And over time I developed this idea, and it's not one that I developed on my own because it wasn't new at all, but that much of our foreign policy, much of our military adventurism is driven not by a need for defense, it's driven not by these high-minded ideals that we claimed. It was driven by the fact that a lot of people made a lot of money off of it. And those people were not me. It's never the young men and women who are out there doing the dying and the killing and the suffering. It's never the civilians in the countries that we go and destroy. That's not who makes the money, it's somebody else. And that began to really color how I saw our system as a whole. And things that I used to be confused about, things I used to look at and say, well, it seems un-American that we have so much wealth while so many people suffer down here. I began to realize that the system wasn't broken. The system was functioning in many ways exactly as it was intended. Mm-hmm. And it was through that I in some ways began to get a little bit of hope again. And this is the irony of all of this. The deeper I went down that rabbit hole, the more critical I became, I really began to understand that it is It is an organization that people have power. And it is really only an organization that people have power. When you are arrayed against the interests that have the money, that hold the media apparatus, that hold all of the power, and it's being used to exploit working people, it's being used to maintain divisions amongst working people, to keep us divided over issues of race, issues of gender, issues of who deserves to be in this country and who doesn't. All this is nonsense. And it is built in to make sure that we never start pointing fingers in the right way, which isn't left and right. We need to start pointing up. It was in this realization that I got into organizing. I got into community organizing. I was mostly brought in because I read a Jane McAlevey book called No Shortcuts, and I fully bought into it. I developed a theory of power and a theory of change, and it was all built around the fact that with good organizational capacity, people have the ability to build power. And I took that and I used it in my own community. I joined a local group. We began to organize our community, and over the course of about a year, I witnessed my community go from being entirely fractured and frankly without power to even protect against a school board challenge, to winning school board races and contesting every single election in our county, and also building out a robust mutual aid network, a lot of people beginning to come in and work together, help each other, help their neighbors, and begin to feel that thing that I think many of you know, which is that you have to feel solidarity to know what it is. You can't explain it to somebody over a cup of coffee. You can't map it out on a whiteboard. You need to stand on a picket line. You need to stand at a rally. You need to knock doors with your neighbors. You need to go to a soup kitchen and work with friends to feed the needy. It is only in that work that you find solidarity. And it was in solidarity that you find power. And so for me, that's where the hope comes in. But I would not have gotten there had I not gotten disillusioned first. And so I often have people often ask me about my military service and my relationship with it, and I still struggle with it to this day because it's a thing I'm simultaneously proud of. It was a big part of my life, but it was also the thing that essentially set me on the path of becoming deeply, deeply critical of my own country in some ways, and of the government of my country and of our entire system. But it was only through that that I began to do the work and engage with the concepts that allow me to feel the hope that we can actually do this. We can rebuild this. And the reason I know that we can is that we are a country that has the legacies that we need to tap into already. We have the legacy of the labor movement. We have the legacy of the suffragette movement and the civil rights movement and the gender equality movement. And these are not legacies of asking permission. We did not get an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week because somebody wrote a nice letter to their congressman. We did not get the Civil Rights Act passed just because LBJ thought it was a good idea. It took decades of organizing, decades of planning on the part of activists and organizers across the country to build secondary power, to use that to pressure the institutional structures. They may have had an ally in LBJ, but without that power that they built, without the sacrifices that they were willing to make, often putting their bodies on the line, without that, we never would have gotten those wins. And it is important for us today to remember this. And I think it's very important for us today to re-engage with these legacies. And I'll be frank, I think one of the reasons we find ourselves in the straits we find ourselves is because the Democratic Party in many ways has forgotten some of those legacies.
Yes.
It is not the whole party. It is not most Democrats, in fact. I'm fully convinced that if most Democrats were running the Democratic Party, we'd have a pretty robust Democratic Party. But there is an element of entrenched power now that has forgotten that it is in that kind of organizing capacity, that is in those legacies that we have power. And I think they've also forgotten to have a theory of power. I think one of the problems we have today is that conservatism and the Republicans in the United States for 40 plus years have maintained a theory of power. And many Democrats in leadership have built a theory of management. And if you run up against a theory of power without one of your own, you will lose 100 out of 100 times. It was a theory of power that had them target the Supreme Court as long back as the 1980s. It's a theory of power that gave us Newt Gingrich in the Congress in the 1990s. It's a theory of power that had Mitch McConnell holding on to seats on the Supreme Court when they weren't even in power.
Right, yeah.
That is power. That's understanding power. And we need to get back to believing that power is something we must wield when we have it.
Yeah. Yes. Huber, step down.
Incidents like the one Bob just mentioned. I'm not surprised, of course, to hear that ICE is still in Somerville. I mean, Chris, I saw that, was it earlier this year when they were kidnapping people down here? It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. They don't care. And the problem is right now, we don't have the institutional mechanisms to make them care. And this is the scary part of all of this. I was just at another house party and somebody asked me, like, how are you going to fix it? And it's like, well, look, when I go, I'm going to be a junior senator from Maine. I'll have one vote in the United States Senate. Even if we retake the House and the Senate, which we will.
Yes.
But even when we do, much of the enforcement mechanisms of this country are held by the executive. We probably shouldn't have planned it that way. But we did, and here we are. But we still have mechanisms of power within the institution. No Democratic senator should be confirming anybody, ever, that comes out of his presidency.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we retake the Senate, we need to use the ethics oversight capacity of the Senate to go after the political entity that is now the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Yes.
I think a case could be made that at least 2 Supreme Court justices with a very quick scratch might reveal lots of ethics violations if we only would look into it. We should not be talking about funding a government that is kidnapping people on the streets of the United States. These are institutional mechanisms that we do have access to, but it is not enough, and this is the crux of it all. The reason I am doing this, yes, I think Susan Collins needs to go. Of course.
Yes.
No more disappointments.
She is a total disappointment. She's very concerned you said that.
She'll think it over. Lots of prayers.
I also think it's very important what kinds of Democrats we put into the Senate.
Yes.
I think Democrats who are going to fight for Medicare for all and universal health care.
Yes.
Democrats who are committed to the labor movement and expanding worker protections and the right to organize. Democrats who are committed to using the tax code to claw back all the money that the ultra wealthy have stolen from the American people. Democrats who are committed to getting money out of politics, ending stock trading by those in Congress. ending Citizens United in whichever way we can. We can have a long conversation about how to do that. Those are the kinds of Democrats that we need to send. But we also, in the state of Maine, have an opportunity here to do something else. And this is why I'm actually running. I am running because we have an opportunity to build out an organizing mechanism in the state of Maine bigger than we have ever seen in our great state. We are going, with this race specifically, to bring in an immense amount of visibility, an immense amount of resources, and an immense amount of money. And we are going to spend that money in the state of Maine, paying field organizers and volunteer coordinators, opening offices, and building out the organizing mechanisms to get people in the door through electoral politics, but get them back out the door as activists and community organizers. Because the project we truly need to be engaged in here is about building that secondary power again. When I go to Washington, D.C. as the junior senator from Maine, as I mentioned, I will have one single vote. And while that vote will hold immense amounts of power, if it is in the minority, or if it is in the minority of my party, fighting for the bigger structural change that we all know is necessary, it will not be enough. And what we need to be able to do is to call back up to Maine. If the rest of the Maine delegation needs to be given a little bit of nudge to come along, to fight for Medicare for all, to tax the rich, to expand social programs, to kill the cap on Social Security so we can fund the program forever and all time, and just make sure that we can expand benefits instead of allowing rich people to not pay into it. In order to make that happen, we are going to need an immense amount of help in the state of Maine. And that's why what we are trying to build needs to stay after we win this race.
Yes.
We need to train people in how to organize, and we need to give them the resources and the abilities to create self-sustaining organizational capacity in the state of Maine. Maine only has 1.4 million people. We have about 800,000 eligible voters, about 500,000 to 600,000 to vote. We do not, those of you who have organized in a state like Massachusetts knows that those are tiny numbers. We do not need all that much to organize the state of Maine. But we do need more than we have right now. But we have a state that is full of committed members of our indivisible chapters, committed members of our community organizations, committed members of our labor movement. We have an immense amount of organizational capacity and energy right now, but we don't have the millions and millions of dollars that we're going to be able to bring into it. And we also don't have the magnet of an electoral campaign. That's how most Americans engage with politics. So we're going to get them in through this, and we're going to get them right back out the door again, organized and trained, and understanding that is only in building power do working people have power. And so you all may know this part. I need your money. So we've raised over $3 million as of yesterday. 3.1 as of today. I just want to let you know, this whole thing fell into my lap at the end of July. That's when I was approached with this as a concept. We built the entire thing between August 10th and August 19th. And then we launched on August 19th, and we've been going gangbusters ever since. We early on thought we had set very aggressive fundraising goals. We promptly blew through them in like a week. And We also were hoping for lots of volunteers, and by lots of volunteers, we were hoping for a couple hundred. That would be great in the state of Maine. As of now, we're well over 7,000. Those of you who live in Maine or spend time in Maine, please go to grantforsenate.com and sign up to volunteer. Because while I'm about to ask everybody else for their money, what's more important is that those of you who can, give us your time. Time, energy, and labor. That is what we need. We need it on the doors. We need it phone banking. We need it putting up flyers. We need it talking to your neighbors. We need it doing all of the hard stuff because, as many of you know, organizing is goddamn difficult. It is tiring. It often feels relentless, and it often feels like you're not getting anything done, and I know that feeling. But we all know that we have to keep doing it. And the hard part is that the next year, if we're gonna do this, is gonna require an immense amount of sacrifice on everyone's part. There are going to be days where going out and knocking doors is not what you want to be doing, and I understand that, I'll be honest. There are days I wake up and I don't want to be doing this. But we have to. We have to because it's the only way forward. Because we do not build the better world without putting in the work. And so for those of you in the state of Maine who can, please sign up, come out, meet your neighbors. They're also going to be really fun. Our canvases are already turning out to be kind of a blast. Everybody's getting together. We're going to have a lot of social events throughout the winter because it gets dark. Kind of cold, but mostly dark. It's good to stay social. For those of you who aren't in Maine, phone banking is great. We could also use some help on like the data front. Anybody that knows how to do spreadsheets, we got 8,000 volunteers. So getting that all organized actually takes a lot of work. So anyone who's got skills on that front, please hit us up. But we need money. Even though we've raised over $3 million, we're gonna need a lot more. This, in order to build out the organizational capacity we want, is gonna require an immense amount of funding. We are thinking we're gonna need about $15 million for the primary. The governor of Maine, Janet Mills, is likely getting in the race. When that happens, an immense amount of money is gonna come pouring in, not on our behalf. We are going to beat it, and honestly, I think we're going to beat it easily because we're building out the actual apparatus to win. I also think that we are running on the kinds of policies that get working Mainers engaged, like healthcare, housing, affordability. Those are issues that I don't care who you voted for. When the hospital closes, the hospital closes. Doesn't matter who you cast a vote for. So we're going to be relentless on that messaging. I don't know what the other candidates are going to run on, but no, I will be surprised if anybody else is going to commit to universal health care. I'll certainly be surprised if anybody commits to a billionaire tax. I don't think anybody's talking about postal banking, which they goddamn well should, because I love postal banking.
Save USPS.
But when all that happens, we're going to need a lot of help. So if you can give a little bit, that's great. If you can give a little bit every month, that is better. It actually allows us to project forward what we're gonna have. It's amazing how much easier it is to hire staff when we know what our monthly income is. So if you can give 10, 15, 20 bucks monthly, frankly, that's better than $100 all at once. So just keep that in mind. If you can give more than that, please do. God knows we need it. We will obviously be able to take checks and stuff here tonight. You can also go to grantforsenate.com. I'm sure many of the wonderful volunteers here will give you a QR code that will take you to a place you can donate on your phone. Do it before you go home, because we forget things. But if you don't forget this, that would be good for me. Good for us, I should say. I want to finish on a very hopeful note. And that is that I do truly believe that this is all within our grasp. There is currently a lot of darkness in our politics. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of division, and a lot of angst. But so much of that is driven by a true anger at the establishment that we live in, at the system that people suffer under every day. And I do think that behind all this darkness, behind all this hatred, behind the fascism, behind the horrors, there is an opportunity there to reharness a lot of this energy, to make people realize that they have far more in common with each other than they do with those far up here. In the state of Maine, where I live in the state of Maine, a very rural town, a lot of my friends are Trump voters. They're not bad people. They didn't vote for Trump because they're racists. They didn't vote for Trump because they want to go after every immigrant in this country. Many of them voted for Trump because he told them that the one thing that they knew was true. And that is that the system they live in is screwing them. Once he told them that, they were willing to forgive a whole lot else. They're about to find out, and they're finding out right now, that they were lied to. They were told that he was going to burn the system down, and that it was going to be replaced with something that would make their lives better. And the hospitals are closing. They were told that he was going to kick out all the immigrants, and they were all going to have jobs. And now they can't afford a house. They were told that tariffs were going to make everybody rich, and now those tariffs have driven up costs 30-40%. They were told that they were going to enter a new age where working people were going to feel more comfortable, where the elites were not going to take advantage of them. And now they are being fleeced and robbed at a rate higher than ever before. We need to be there. We need to be there with a message, with policies, and with open arms to welcome some of these people back. If we aren't there, if the Democratic Party cannot bring itself to focus on those kind of economic populist issues, then they won't come back, and we will lose again to Susan Collins. And the Senate will remain in the hands of Republicans, and this horror show will go on and on and on. But it does not have to be that way. So I ask you to join us, to support us, and to come in to this campaign and help us rebuild the Democratic Party, turn it back into the party of working people in this country, and help lead us out of this dark time in history and into a future in which Americans do not have to struggle, but Americans get to live lives of fulfillment and dignity. Thank you very much.